Perhaps a greater tragedy than a broken dream is a life forever defined by it. Oh, I heartily agree with the writer, speaker, broadcaster. Sheridan Voysey is with us, a man who turned his broken dream into a new beginning. And it is a joy to welcome him from the place I always associate with C.S. Lewis, Oxford, England.
Good to be with you, Maura. Thanks so much for the time.
Resurrection Year, a story we want to tell, just in part because the book is, I said just before we began, there are so many arms to this, but I have to say that I read your first 10 years of this story out loud to my husband after a funeral, and it was tough.
Oh, goodness.
2000
As if you weren't having a tough
2010.
enough day already. That is the toughest chapter, it really is.
It
Things
is.
get very hopeful after that, but that first chapter is the toughest, and that's the one that everybody resonates with their own broken dream. Ours was a particular story, but people bring their own stories to that, and they resonate with that one particular chapter because of the emotional content of it.
Well, you say in order for a resurrection to happen, something has to die.
Right.
And this was a long, painful journey of infertility.
It was.
For you and Marin, 18 years married, you have to take us to that chapter and just tell us what you went through.
Well, I'll take you to the year 2000 when Marin walks into the kitchen and she says to me, "Honey, I think it's time." And I said, "Time for what?" Typical male, I'm not even on the right track. And she says, "Time we started a family." And she was right. We'd been married 4 or 5 years by that stage. We were in a settled situation. It was time. And as any couple knows, once you've made that decision, every 28 days, you're looking for signs of success, aren't you? Well, we kept on looking for those signs of success, and over the months, the signs didn't come. We went and got some tests done. The tests revealed there was a significant problem on my side, and that without either a divine intervention or technological assistance, our dreamt-of child would be hard to have.
So then you have another decision to make. Are you going to pursue all avenues? That's a crisis as well.
Oh, it is a crisis, and it was a tough decision. So, exactly, I mean, the amount of decisions that an infertile couple faces. Do we try in vitro fertilization? What about the ethics of that from a medical standpoint, particularly from a Christian standpoint? What about adoption? What about fostering? What about overseas adoption? What about being childless? Actually just, enjoying our married life together and having the freedom to move and dream? Well, over the next 10 years, we pretty much tried every one of those options. You name it, we pretty much tried it. And there were numerous rounds of IVF treatment. There was a lengthy 2-year wait on the Australian adoption list without ever getting the phone call.
Which is where you were living at the time.
We were living
Australia.
at the time. It's originally Australian. And the thing that really, which I'm sure probably got you the most at the end of that first chapter, Moira, is that at the end of that 10 years, we were doing one final round of in vitro fertilization, giving this one final chance. We'd already decided.
And the hormone levels were high and getting higher.
They said, everything is right. It looks like you're pregnant. After 10 years of prayers and healing prayer and the whole lot, and we thought we had a child, and then we got a phone call on Christmas Eve saying, "We are so sorry. It was just a mirage."
On Christmas
Eve.
Eve. It just doesn't get more sad.
Cruel twist.
Oh, I'm sure I did. God, this is your journal note. God, this is cruel. Leaving us in this wilderness, we've walked round in circles for years, tired, thirsty, and confused. 1 minute we've glimpsed the promised land, and the next minute you've barred us from entering it. What did this do to your faith?
It's a very good question, Maura. I think anybody who goes for a broken dream, particularly over an extended period of time, there can be, when it comes to the faith aspect, one of 2 different angles you can take. One is that you go, "God, you are mean, you are cruel." And funnily enough, even though I wrote that, and that's how I was feeling that night on Christmas Eve, that was really Marin's approach. She got very, very angry with God, and her relationship with God really started to close down. The other thing you can do is look the other way and blame yourself. And actually that's probably what I did. Sheridan, you must not be spiritual enough. You must not have enough faith. Somehow you have held Marin back from having what she so desperately wants. God's a miracle working God. God's a good God. You must be the weak link. So between the 2 of us, Marin went against God. I went internally, basically critiquing myself. And between the 2 of us, we were in a pretty bad state spiritually for a little while there.
One of the interesting aspects of the book and what makes it such an important read is that you, at some point, decided to go on an in-depth theological journey, wrestling out God and suffering. Just maybe the biggest question that exists.
Oh, and I've got it all sorted out now, Moira. I've got it all sorted out. Long story short, we ended up getting our new beginning in Oxford in the United Kingdom. And on the way over, we went and had a bit of a holiday in Rome, and we had a bit of time in a little place called Le Brie in Switzerland.
Francis Schaeffer's
Well done.
marvelous, marvelous place of learning and sharing
questioning.
thoughts and questioning.
And questioning. It's a place for seekers of all kinds, whether they're Christian or not. The majority actually normally don't have any Christian faith. Come along and just ask the big questions. Well, we went there for a period of time.
Is it actually in the Swiss Alps?
It is.
In the Alps,
Yeah, it is. You take this little bus and you go up the hill and you get off at Waymo and you go and spend a bit of time there. Now, this is no 4-star or even 3-star accommodation, which is part of the beauty of it. I mean, you come there to go and ask those questions. We spent a fortnight there, just starting that conversation happening as to, God, number one, why did you say no to us? But actually, number two, maybe this is even more important for us, why did you stay silent? See, during that 10 years of wrestling, during that 10 years of walking through the wilderness, as you mentioned there in the first chapter of the book, God spoke to us about other things in our life. He gave us direction about other aspects of our life. We had answers to prayer elsewhere, but when it came to this one issue of having a family, he was completely and utterly silent for a whole decade. We've never, and I have to say, we've never got the answer to that. Maybe sometimes God has to be allowed to keep some answers to himself. Maybe that's his prerogative.
No pat answers, you say. But purpose in the pain?
And that is where we're starting to see that redemption. Recycling is a good word, isn't it? That recycling of the pain and the suffering. We don't know why God never gave us a child. We would be good parents. Some children get given to parents who abuse them. We'd be great parents. Why? Why? We don't understand fully.
That just adds insult to injury.
It's hard, isn't it?
That thinking, doesn't it?
Well, there's a bit in the book where Marion and I are watching TV news program, and there's a story that comes on there about a child that was abandoned in a Sydney rubbish dump, and Marion has to leave the room. It's a rough old world, isn't it? It's a rough, tough old world. But what we're seeing now is, even without the answers, we're seeing God redeem and recycle our pain into suffering to others. I have a friend who is a very well-known British author named Adrian Plass. Many of your viewers will know of him.
Adrian Plass, what a buddy to have.
Had him on the show, have you?
I don't think so.
Well,
in
you
all
should.
the years.
Next time he's over, grab him on here, get him into this.
Just a marvelous wit and
really
writer.
Is.
Oh, boy.
And he said something really profound to me. We were walking down the park one day, and he asked me how Marion and I were going now that we'd started again in Oxford. And I said, well, we're going okay. Marion sometimes gets a bit teary, and my career is a little bit up in the air because I'd left a fairly successful career to come over to the UK.
In radio?
In radio, hosting a show which itself was a 10-year dream come true, which had to be relinquished for Marion to start again because she was in such a bad state.
Can I insert a picture of you with Darlene Check?
Oh, why not?
At this point, just one of the,
that's a nice
the
memory.
fun moments, nice memory from your time in Australia.
Yeah, it's a nice memory, yeah. We had this experience of coming over to the UK, and Adrian then said, Sheridan, have you thought about the amount of people that Jesus ministered to while he hung on the cross? He said, you think about it. Jesus ministered to his mother, putting her in the care of John. Remember, mother, here is your son, here is your mother. He ministered to the thief crucified next to him. Truly, today I tell you, today you'll be with me in paradise. He ministered to the centurion who said, surely this was the Son of God. He ministered to the people who were crucifying him. Father, forgive them, they do not know what they're doing. And he ministered to all of us, forgiving our sins through his sacrifice. He said, Sheridan, notice this. All of that happens while he's on the cross, before things come good at the resurrection. He said, yes, Sheridan, this is a painful journey for you, but if you allow him, out of your suffering, out of your crucifixion, out of your darkness will come opportunities to minister to people in ways you otherwise never could. And that's exactly what we've had as a result of Resurrection Year coming out and the story coming out, is we're in this new ministry of serving people that have got broken dreams and helping them start again. It's not what I had planned for my life, Maura. It's not what I had planned.
But to come back to that marvelous quote that we began with, perhaps a greater tragedy than a broken dream is a life forever defined by it. You could have stayed bitter and broken and in a place where you really don't trust in the goodness of God because of what he has permitted. You had to make a choice, and for the sake of your marriage, you both had to make the choice to look for a new dream. Tell me God helped you with that. Please.
We can look back now and we can see, exactly. At the time, we were just kind of almost floundering, holding out for something, because after 10 years of walking through the wilderness of infertility, you're in a pretty bad state. With every dream comes an identity. And Merrin wanted to be a mother. That's an identity statement. She couldn't become a mother. And so who is she if she's not a mother? So you've got to ask big questions if you go through a broken dream. And it's not just infertility. Who are you if you can't find Mr. or Mrs. Right? You so long to be married and you're still single, or you've lost your career, or you had your career, or you've never been able to take your career into new vistas that you wanted to take it into. Any broken dream has an identity, and so there's a sense of rebuilding yourself afterwards. The one thing that Merrin had longed to do, apart from become a mum, was to live and work overseas. And so it seemed appropriate that when that phone call came on Christmas Eve saying that we were no longer pregnant, that it was time for her to have a consolation prize, we call it, or a secondary dream fulfilled.
And so she said, take a risk. Let's live overseas. Let's have an adventure.
Let's have an adventure.
I love that just sprang up. This is a hope deferred makes the heart sick and crushes that spirit. But there was that vision. And I love, too, that you both expressed hope in having spiritual descendants, in being the best aunt and uncle you could be to nieces and nephews. And God has opened an amazing door for you that we need to be praying about.
Thank you.
Talk about 2 minutes of potential that have eternal significance.
When I left the show in Australia, which was a national show, and it was a particular kind of radio show that engaged let's say the spiritual but not religious crowd of Australians. So we were trying to reach secular Australia, talking about the things of Christian faith, and it was a pretty wild old show, actually. Some Sunday nights we'd have Hindu priests calling in, and Scientologists, and all manner of folks, Muslims, and it was a pretty exciting show to host in that regard. Leaving that so that Merrin could have her new beginning in what then turned out to be Oxford,
England,
was a tough old thing to do. And there wasn't really any kind of show like that for me to start or even to do in the UK. But some doors have opened now to do something pretty exciting with the BBC, one of the 3 main BBC radio networks, which between the 3 of them really have about half the audience of the UK listening to them. One of those, Radio 2, has a little spot called Pause for Thought, and that's an opportunity for me to bring a bit of a Christian thought to, at the moment, with the slot that I'm on, about 2 million people.
Wow. Worth waiting for.
Pretty exciting.
That's a baby worth waiting for. And I just love your heart and your outlook. And we have a picture here of you in C.S. Lewis's study. That's kind of cool. I've been in the Rabbit Room in the Eagle and Child, the pub where the Inklings met.
Yes.
I've stood on that spot where Ridley and Latimer sadly were burned at the stake, but a great testimony. And you celebrate your new home there are 2 great paragraphs. I just want you to read the first one. On page 76, I just want you to hear this man's writing.
This was a special moment, actually. This was a special moment. This is when we've just on our way to Oxford. And now we head to a new and distant land, a land of castles and cathedrals, old pubs and rowing clubs, of Big Ben and Stonehenge, the Cotswolds and the Highlands, the land of Chaucer and Austen, Shakespeare and Milton, Wordsworth and Dickens, the Brontes and Blyton, the land that gave us tennis and cricket, Monty Python and Sherlock, Pink Floyd, Coldplay, Bacon, Chaplin and Hitchcock, plus Wesley and the Methodists, Booth and the Salvationists, Wilberforce and the Abolitionists, and 1,000 brilliant minds. And it's true. Walk down High Street of Oxford, and my goodness, it just reeks of brilliance.
Well, thank you for the brilliance of your history and what it can mean to someone needing the kind of encouragement that you have found and are living and still discovering daily, Sheridan.
Thanks so much, Maura.
Thank you. Love to Merrin. Bring her next time.
Oh, I will. She'd love to meet you.
The God of the crucifixion is the God of the resurrection. Resurrection year.